All right, we'll call this meeting in order. Supervisor Leggett, please lead us in the pledge.
All rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody today to this meeting. I'll ask for a roll call.
Mr. Conover,
Here.
Mr. Leggett,
Here.
Mr. Diamond,
Here.
Mr. McDevitt,
Here.
Ms. Bramer, here, Mr. Bruno,
Here.
Mr. Driscoll,
Here.
Mrs. Frazier, here, Mr. Drossy,
Here.
Ms. Hogan, here, Mr. Dickinson,
Here.
Mr. Merlino,
Here.
Mr. Stroud,
Here.
Mr. Wild,
Here.
Mr. McGowan,
Here.
Ms. Seaver, here, Mr. Beatty,
Here.
Mr. Thomas,
Here.
Ms. Runyon, here, Chairman Garrity,
Here.
quorum is established.
Okay. First item of business with a motion to approve the minutes of the December 17th board meeting and the January 6th organizational meeting subject to correction by the board. We have a motion by Supervisor Hogan. Do we have a second? Second by Supervisor Jurassi. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, we have a presentation of Employee of the Month. And it is my great honor to ask that Deborah Tulin from Warren County Public Health come up with Janelle, and we would like to make this presentation. The Warren County Board of Supervisors proudly commends you for going above and beyond in your service to the people of Warren County while performing your duties in the Health Services Department. And certainly, Deb, you have had a lot going on, so I don't know, normally do it over here or right there.
Janelle, I think, is going to say a few
Okay,
words.
Janelle?
Whichever way. Do you like me to read, or do you want to do the picture first?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is such an awesome opportunity to be able to recognize our employees. So thank you for allowing us to have the Employee of the Month designation. Debbie started with Health Services in September of 2010 as the principal clerk for the preschool program. She's responsible for ensuring students receive the appropriate services and facilitating all the payment. In her tenure, Debbie readily volunteers to fill gaps and helps with any agency activities to boost morale. Debbie is a very positive, energetic person for our office. She's friendly, personable, participates with enthusiasm for all office activities, such as making decorations for Cinco de Mayo, cupcakes and treats for office celebrations. With COVID, she's demonstrated creativity to ensure food is individually wrapped. Also, she enthusiastically will dress up for any occasion in the office, such as wearing blue for Joan Grishcott Day, wearing pearls for Judge Ginsburg Day, sports jerseys, red for Women's Heart Days, etc. Her laugh is infectious in a very good way. Halloween is Debbie's favorite holiday, both at work and at home. Debbie and her husband dress up and have always decorated their garage to trick or treat for all that stop by in Warrensburg. During the holidays, Debbie is active in county-sponsored adopt families, from the organization to the collection to the wrapping of presents. Debbie is a strong advocate for the county and the preschool program, which is a $3 million program. She's excellent at auditing all of her vouchers from the vendors, scrutinizing all expenses, and ensuring everyone is accountable. Her work ethic is excellent. Debbie is always willing to help in any way she can. With COVID, she's been exceptionally helpful in assisting the county with questions, taking phone calls for public health. She's a total team player. She was instrumental in setting a schedule to ensure support staff for evenings and weekends were there for coverage. Throughout the pandemic, she saw a need, she had a solution, and she volunteered to make it happen. Debbie's also active in CSEA. She's initially volunteered to serve as a representative, assisting to resolve issues. She later was elected president and assisted with negotiations. She's a true advocate and a perfect liaison. Debbie keeps our spirits up in the office. She keeps our office fun. We truly appreciate her dedication to both Warren County Health Services and to our staff. She's married, has 2 children. They both recently graduated from college, and she's very active outside of work with many family, friends, and church, following all COVID protocols, of course.
Congratulations. And I would say, she may be small in stature, but she's sits across the table for us negotiating. You listen to what she has to say.
I want to just say thank you very much. This is a great honor. It's an honor working here, being part of the pandemic and everything going on. I'm not the only one. I mean, I know we call ourselves the Delta Force. If you called, you got one of the B's on the phone. There's 4 of us. Donna, Diane, Debbie, and Diana. That's us. And we're there to help you. And this is really time for all of them. So thank you very much.
We also are fortunate this month to have numerous employees who have completed the county's leadership training program, and I'd like to recognize each one of them. If they're here, come up, we have a certificate. Terry Cuomo, undersheriff. Is he here? I don't see him. Lexi Delory, real property tax. Lexi. We have Denise DeRista, Veteran Services. Denise, is she here? And then we have Christina Masterani, DSS, Department of Social Services. Rachel Sieber, Town of Queensbury at-large supervisor. Rachel? And Jeff Waddell, Director of Weights and Measures. Congratulations, Jeff. Thank you all. I have a report by a county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Caught me off guard. It's a little quicker than usual. Employee anniversaries this month with 25 years, Lieutenant Russ Lale in the Sheriff's Office, and with 20 years, Correction Officer David Didio. Thank you very much to both these gentlemen for their service and their dedication to public safety in Warren County. I'd like to mention actually the first 3 floor resolutions. Floor resolution number 1 is to suspend the rules to allow floor resolutions 2 and 3. Floor resolutions 2 and 3 are budget amendments that go along with previously adopted salaries for various positions in 2022. These salaries went through committee in December and went to the board meeting in December, where they were adopted through Resolution 572 of 2021. So there are 3 departments that are affected. One is civil service. The civil service assistant who was hired very late in the year is being put into the proper increment for his county service. The amount of that is about $3,000. There were 2 positions created late in the year in the public health department. One is a public health educator, and the other is a registered professional nurse focusing on immunizations. The salaries for those positions are $44,384 and $51,502. And in the sheriff's department, there was a civil law enforcement officer position eliminated and a patrol officer position created. And the change in that, the additional salary needed is about $1,500. So those budget amendments are represented in floor resolution number 2 and floor resolution number 3. Number 2 is for the state aid portion of the public health positions. And floor resolution number 3 is for the transfers. So in the health department, the additional 50% that's needed for these positions is being transferred out of the CHA, where we have multiple nursing vacancies. And for civil service and the sheriff's department, out of the contingent account for salaries. So those at the appropriate time would need to come to the floor. There are the clerk of the board and the county attorney both have minor amendments to the rules of the board resolution. I don't know if they would want to get into those now or later on in the meeting. I'll leave it to them. Okay, the county attorney will defer to his report. Okay, since the December board meeting, it's been actually very busy. At Christmas week, we did a lot of COVID activities. We're on conference calls with nursing homes, all 4 nursing homes in the county, with New York State, and we worked out a mask distribution program. I believe it was, if memory serves, I think it was 28,000 masks we got out that week, which was a difficult effort to do, but a lot of people chipped in and we got it done. New Year's week was another very busy week with COVID, and it involved a lot of planning for our initial test kit allocation. That was about 2,800 test kits. The first week of January, we handed out those test kits. I want to thank stewards, especially the frontline employees in the shops that helped us do that. It wasn't an easy task. They went very, very quickly. It was successful. And I also want to thank the 4 towns that don't have a stewards, Thurman, Stony Creek, Horicon, and Hague, who stepped up and handled their distributions very well. So thanks to everyone on that. Monday, the 10th, I met with Supervisor Gerasi and Supervisor Runyon to do a little orientation as we do for new supervisors. It was a real pleasure, and I look forward to working with both of you. And on Wednesday, the 12th, we started off planning for the negotiations with the Teamsters. The Teamsters, if you recall, are the new representatives for the correction officers bargaining unit. And that is currently the only union that we have that does not have a contract. So we look forward to entering into negotiations with the Teamsters and the men and women in that unit and getting to a contract. The other thing I wanted to do today was just hit a couple of key updates from the state budget. There was a lot of good news in the state budget this year, one of which is the diversion of county sales tax to pay for the aid and incentives to municipalities program. And this is the governor's executive budget, so it's still got to go through the process with the legislature. But that diversion is eliminated, and that program is funded again out of state funds. For Warren County, that's about $224,000. Local sales tax rates that are above 3%, we're not one of them, but most other counties in the state are. Those would be permanent, and counties that are not yet up to 4% would have the authority on their own to go to 4% if they so chose, without getting state legislation to do that. There is a new broadband initiative called Connect All. The details are not, unless it's buried in the legislation, the details are not quite out there yet, but they want to leverage an additional $1 billion in investment for that initiative. We'll get into that and figure out how it works. And there's another piece in there that's actually an incentive for applications that involve the Connect All program. And it would, for broadband fiber construction that utilizes this program, it would eliminate the fees on the use and occupancy of state right-of-way for the fiber optic cable. And that's an issue that advocates for broadband know all about. Over in public health, the Article 6 base grants for public health departments are being increased. The base grant for a partial service county like ours is $500,000. And then when you hit that amount, they reimburse the next 36%. That base grant for us would be increased to $577,500. And then on the personal services side, the state currently doesn't reimburse fringe. This would allow for some fringe to be reimbursed because they would go to a straight 50% formula on personal services if this makes it through the budget. Public safety, there's $10 million for probation departments to provide pretrial services. Bob Usey is looking into this. Really good news. I was talking to Frank before the meeting about the highway aid. We budgeted this year against our expanded paving program. We budgeted for the enhanced CHIPS funding and Marchicelli funding that we received last year. We also budgeted for the Bridge New York and the Pave New York funds. And we also budgeted for the extreme winter recovery funds. All of those things are in this budget. Usually the legislature will have to add those into the executive budget, but they're already there. We'll have Kevin Hajos dive into the numbers just to make sure. There's also potential for additional funds. There's a new Pave Our Potholes program. The Bridge New York funds actually increased by $1 billion. So we'll keep an eye on all of that. Veteran services agencies, base grants, they're currently the state aid would go from $10,000 to $25,000. There are a couple pieces that we still need to keep our eye on and work on. On the Board of Elections side, there's a piece in there that would change the voter registration deadline from 25 days before the election to 10 days before the election. That'll be labor intensive on Board of Elections. On the sales tax diversion for the distressed hospital fund, that's the bigger piece. We talked already about the AIM program. Distressed hospital fund for us last year was $413,000. There's a provision in there that would make this diversion permanent. Haven't had time to dive into the language of the legislation yet, but I will. There is increases to preschool special education providers. Their rates that they get paid would increase 11% under the executive budget. We're responsible for 40.5% share of that program. So our costs that we're paying there would go up 11% for the provider fees under that provision. And there's also, NISAC has stated that there are changes to public assistance programs that result in a $39.5 million cost shift to counties. It's not yet apparent how they calculated that, but we'll keep an eye on that and figure that out and see what if anything, it means for us. And there is a piece on ethics. The state is increasing the requirements on this proposal rather would increase the requirements on localities for their ethics codes. And there are two areas that this appears to hit. One is the definition of relative, and the other is the gift amount. Currently, the gift amount is $75, and that would be changed to anything above a nominal value. And relatives would be an expansive change. The definition in state law right now of a relative is essentially spouse, child, dependent. The definition of relative under this would expand to direct descendants of your grandparents and their spouses. So that's a whole lot of people. That's cousins, spouses, and things like that. I emailed Larry about this. We'll keep an eye on it and see what if anything we have to do to our local ethics code if this goes through. There's finally a piece that may be of interest to code enforcement. ADUs, they're accessory dwelling units. The executive budget will require local governments to provide for the creation of ADUs. Then they could be attached or detached residential units that provide complete independent living facilities on the same lot as the primary residence. This is to promote affordable and multi-generational housing, and it would require local governments to authorize the creation of at least one ADU per residential lot and to provide reasonable standards for structural requirements for those ADUs. And it would allow, if you were denied a building permit or an occupancy permit for an ADU, it would allow you to bring an Article 78 in the Supreme Court. So those are some updates on the state budget. We'll dive further into it and keep you posted. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, well, I'd like to thank the governor. She certainly did look out for the counties and localities this time. And obviously the devil's always in the details. So when the two other branches of government get together, hopefully we'll come out of this looking pretty well. County Attorney, please.
Thank you. County Attorney Report for January 2022. I wanted to start by saying thank you to those supervisors who had some issues or legal concerns that came up over the first few weeks of January and reached out to me to have discussions about them. I appreciate that opportunity and that interaction, whether it was by phone or in-person meeting. Providing me the opportunity to provide some guidance, I think, is really a core function of my office's responsibility to this board. And I just wanted to to encourage going forward when there's a need or a question relating to the duties, functions, or operations of the county, please let me know. And hopefully through a conversation or a phone call, we can kind of work through that issue, or with some additional research, provide a clearer answer. And with that said, I also wanted to thank the department heads of Warren County. My office had well over 100 contracts that came out of the December 2021 board meeting, and that's quite a lot for 1 month. And I appreciate the department's patience earlier this month as we prioritized and worked through the most important contracts first. And as we're still in the process of working through the remaining contracts, I just wanted to acknowledge your patience and thank you for that. Next, my office did issue 3 formal attorney opinion letters during January. My practice, absent an objection from the board, is when there's a formal opinion that's issued, the entire board will receive a copy. And then it will be also directed to the specific department or departments that requested that opinion, or in the alternative, other departments that may be affected by the content of that opinion as well. We spent a significant amount of time in January working on organizational questions as well as the rules of the board that are coming up before this board in this session. And my office's function and focus throughout the month has been to do our best to clarify what's in the rules, and where there might be an ambiguity, to provide recommendations or suggestions for more clarity in those rules. I hope as we go through it, the board finds at least the administrative changes from my office providing clearer designations and directions going forward for this board as well as future boards. There's also 4 floor resolutions in your packages I wanted to briefly address. Floor resolution number 4 is just seeking permission to bring resolutions 5, 6, and 7 to the floor. Resolution 5, floor resolution 5 is seeking a replacement deed that was initially issued by the chair of the board in 1996 from a tax foreclosure sale. The practice at that time was to provide those deeds to the successful bidder and buyer. The county no longer does that because of this particular issue, which was that sometimes deeds did not get filed. We were able to retrieve from storage a copy of the original signed deed from 1996, and we're able to confirm that everything required for that closing did in fact occur. The only thing that didn't occur is once the successful buyer received the deed, they did not file it with the clerk's office. So for that reason, and actually to really assist people farther down the stream of title, we're asking the board to consider this resolution today so that we can issue a replacement deed so other property owners in Warren County are not delayed further or detained in their efforts to take actions with their property, which is affected by this one particular deed. And to be clear, the property involved in this deed is more or less, I don't want to call it a road, but it's a right of access to multiple other parcels. And the lack of title on this one particular deed is causing issues for multiple property owners. Resolution number 6 is to correct the clerical error that occurred on the tax roll for 2022. And because the amount is over $2,500, the authority to approve the clerical correction rests with the Board of Supervisors. From this issue arose one of the two attorney opinion letters that my office issued this month to help the board see and understand authorities for approving certain types of errors regarding tax rolls and collection of taxes from individuals. The second issue that arose from this issue being presented to my office is found in floor resolution number 7, which is the board's ability to delegate corrections under $2,500 for errors on the tax roll or to authorize refunds or credits. In the past, this board has delegated that authority to the county attorney. In doing the research in this area, it became very apparent that state law requires this board to authorize that delegation in the calendar year in which the delegation is going to occur and the action is going to occur. So in other words, for the county auditor to handle these corrections under $2,500, it was my interpretation of state law that the delegation of authority from the board had to occur in the same calendar year. The statute clearly states that the delegation ends at the end of the calendar year in which the authorization is issued. So this board did approve a similar resolution to this in December of 2021, but that was 2021. So going forward, we will ensure that this authorization to delegate, should future boards and this board seek to do that, occurs early in January of each year so that it's effective for the year it's issued. We are initial planning for the first meeting of the year for the Ethics Board in early February, as well as starting our internal process for handling and compiling financial disclosures received from required parties. And that'll be moving forward in February. I am pleased to report that my office has not been served any new lawsuits in the first part of January 2022. As any new lawsuits are served, I'll advise the board accordingly of their receipt. And finally, we've started the process and we're going to continue really over the course of the entire year, but with a really strong focus on the next few weeks of reviewing the tax foreclosure process for Warren County from start to finish. It's going to be a rather large undertaking. I don't anticipate it will have any meaningful effect on the process for 2022, but my hope is that by doing a top to bottom review, as well as walking through the 2022 process that the county has used, we'll be able to come up with some suggestions and recommendations for the process going forward, and also advise the board of some specific policy decisions that are present in the current process so that the board is aware of what areas are discretionary and what areas are mandatory, and make informed decisions on the tax foreclosure process, maybe in a more meaningful way as the year goes on. Subject to your questions, that's my report for my office for January of 2022.
There's a lot to digest there. Any questions for the county attorney? Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. On floor resolution number 6, Mr. Elman, my understanding, and I could be wrong, I did talk to the real property director about the final resolve paragraph there, directing or authorizing her to make the correction. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to have the town of Lake Luzerne, who is the one who made the application for the corrected tax roll, be authorized to make the correction?
I'll defer that to the treasurer and to real property tax coordinator. My understanding is, I'll defer the question. I'm not, I believe it's already with the county because it was a school tax item that got re-levied onto the county tax bill. But the details of what is corrected, I'll,
Would you care to answer?
The application did come to my office from the town of Lake Luzerne. We do our research. We have a whole process that we have to go through and we have to fill out a report as to our findings, whether I approve or not, or recommend, I guess, to approve or not. We recommended to approve this. This was a mistake on the school tax collector's part. There was a check that was still in the envelope that she overlooked. When the person got their tax bill in January, they realized this was on there and that it shouldn't be. So they reached out to her. She went back to the envelope, found the check. The school decided to deposit it. So this is something that when a correction like this is done, yes, I recommend approval. I have to either have Carla sign off, or in this case, because it was over $2,500, it had to come before you guys as a board. And then with this resolution, then I will turn it back over to the town for the town tax collector to correct. She's the one who has that now. It's, you know, the county's warrant, but she's the one collecting. So any of this information, she then has to turn back in when she turns her rolls in April to the county treasurers. But this will give her the authority to balance her books with this. But it's really her that's correcting the actual roll because she's got to reissue a bill to the taxpayer so that they can pay the corrected amount.
Any further questions?
I just want to make sure that in the resolved paragraph that how it should read, if it's not the real property tax services director that's making the correction to the tax roll.
That the Board of Supervisors hereby authorizes the real property tax services director I guess to move forward with her decision and forward to the town tax collector to make the correction to the 2022, or I guess just to the tax roll. And I don't know, it's just they're gonna redo the bill. So I don't know how you want to do that language, not really stating, I guess, that the outstanding taxes have been paid. But they have to correct the tax amount, change it in their file, and then reissue a new bill to the owner.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to amend it to that effect.
And if I can just add what that language would be, would then read resolved that the Board of Supervisors hereby authorizes the real property tax services director to forward to the tax collector for the town of Lake Luzerne to correct the tax roll and reissue a new bill to indicate that the outstanding taxes have been paid.
You concur? Supervisor?
I would just say that I don't know if I would mention the fact that that had been corrected. I would just say to issue a corrected tax bill. I don't know if we have to state that those have been paid.
Supervisor Bramer,
Sure, yeah.
make that a motion.
Yep.
It's second by Supervisor Dickinson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you.
I just
Any other questions?
Just one more, thanks. I appreciate the report from the county attorney on our litigation status and on the ethics board. I'm wondering if there are any updates on the workplace violence policy reports as was amended at our last personnel committee meeting and adopted by the board in our January meeting.
No.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, I believe that the amendments to the policy amended the policy, but there was no further action other than the amendments to the policy that were passed by the Board of Supervisors. I would imagine in 2022, there is going to come a time where a committee and this board will seek to look at that policy to address some of the procedural issues that we presented in December 2021 regarding processing of complaints and adjudication of complaints, specifically when complaints involve members of the Board of Supervisors. But I don't have anything further to report on that larger question of a more global review of the policy regarding the handling of complaints. Does that answer?
That wasn't exactly my question. My question was about the implementation of the policy as revised and where we are in that process.
Oh, okay. And that's maybe a more specific question on a particular matter. And
I'm just looking for whether or not there is an update.
there's no update for this meeting. It's my understanding and the county administrator's understanding that a proposed findings of fact will be provided and discussed at the Personnel Committee meeting in executive session, if appropriate by the Personnel Committee. And that was the resolution, I believe, of the board in December to forward it to the Personnel Committee and for the county administrator and the county attorney to write a summary of the report in question for consideration by the Personnel Committee.
May I? I thought that it was our decision that those types of things were coming to the full board, not going through Personnel Committee.
And if the county administrator wants to jump in, I believe it did come to the full board and the full board made a determination to refer it to the Personnel Committee for review.
That was my recollection as well, that it would first go to personnel and pass through personnel to the full board for any action that would need to be taken to close out a complaint of this nature.
I'll follow up offline. Thank you.
Any other questions for the county attorney? Supervisor?
Thank you. My questions are more oriented towards the county administrator's report. I just want some clarity. I believe that you might have stated on the record that the governor has included in her budget that it doesn't require the legislator to raise sales tax above anybody that's at 3%, doesn't require the state to approve raising of the sales tax. Is that correct?
What it actually says is that, so Warren County, Washington County, and Saratoga County are the three counties that are still at 3.
Yep.
Everybody else is higher. It states that between 3% and 4%, those who are already there don't need to keep getting state authorization to extend those rates. I believe they do that every 2 years or every 3 years. And it states that the 3 counties that are at 3 would also have that ability to go to 4 without state authorization. Anybody who's above 4 would have to continue to get state authorization.
Because I went recently to the Office of the State Controller's Office and does that particular branch of government have to sign off on any changes to sales tax?
Not to my knowledge, but I would have to research that further.
Because I was looking at some of the different sales tax that are being proportioned out through agreements through within the cities, the counties, and the villages. And I happen to notice that this year in 2022, Oneida County is raising their sales tax, Utica Rome area, up to 8.75%. So just something to share.
Yeah, there are some municipalities that are quite a bit above 4. There are a few in Westchester, I remember from my days there.
Thank you.
Okay, bring up communications.
We have Warren County Probation Department's monthly report of criminal and family workloads for the month of November 2021. Pool Insuring Arena's report of 2021 capital improvement projects, and a letter from Larry Ellman, Warren County Attorney, stating the order of succession for the County Attorney's Office. All of these items were sent to the board yesterday.
Any questions on communications? All right, reading of resolutions.
Resolution numbers 18 through 32 were distributed to the board and posted to the Warren County website on Tuesday, January 18th, which met the distribution deadline specified in the rules of the board. There are 7 floor resolutions included in your packet. All of them will require a motion to bring them to the floor. So the first one is floor resolution number 1. That's waiving the rules for floor resolution numbers 2 and 3.
So we do a motion. Do we have a motion? Motion by Supervisor Strauss, second by Supervisor Merlino. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, floor resolution number 1 is now resolution number 33. There's floor resolution number 2. That's a budget amendment.
Somebody want to make that a motion for the motion by Supervisor Leggett, second by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next.
Floor resolution number 2 is now resolution number 34. Floor resolution number 3 is transfer.
Motion by Supervisor Frazier, second by Supervisor Thomas for resolution number 3. Any discussion? All those in favor? Discussion. Supervisor Hope.
Should that would be a roll call? Yes, it will be a roll call.
Now or
It will be. one.
we have a motion and a second. We had discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next.
Floor resolution number 3 is now resolution number 35. Just backing up a second, resolution numbers 34 and 35 will both be subject to roll call vote.
Okay.
Floor resolution number 4 is waiving the rules for floor resolution numbers 5, 6, and 7.
We have a motion to waive the rules. Motion by Supervisor Conover, second by Supervisor Stroud. Discussion. No discussion. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question as it relates to the procedural aspect of this for our county attorney. We're doing a motion to waive the rules based on last year's rules, I assume, so it's a 2/3 to amend, even though we haven't adopted our new rules yet for 2022. Would that be correct? To waive the rules? Because we haven't done ours yet for this year.
The 2021 rules are in effect until the 2022 rules are enacted by the board.
So it's a 2/3 vote to waive the rules right now. Okay. And then I assume the first order of business is to talk about the standing rules for this year. Procedurally.
It's a resolution.
Yeah, well, we can discuss that. I guess it's resolution 32.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second to waive the rules. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Floor resolution number 4 is now resolution number 36. Floor resolution number 5 is authorizing a replacement deed for a parcel conveyed at the 1996 public auction.
Motion. Motion by Supervisor Wild. We have a second. Second by Supervisor Dickinson. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Floor resolution number 5 is now resolution number 37. Floor resolution number 6 is authorizing a corrected tax roll for 2022 to correct a clerical error on the tax roll for a parcel in Lake Luzerne.
We have a motion. Motion by Supervisor Dickinson, second by Supervisor Molino. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Floor resolution number 6 is now resolution number 38, and floor resolution number 7 is authorizing the county auditor to approve New York State real property tax law correction of errors and applications for refunds.
We have a motion on this resolution. Motion by Supervisor Stroud. Do we have a second? Supervisor Frazier. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Okay, floor resolution number 7 is now resolution number 39.
Okay, now we'll have discussion on the rest of resolutions. Any discussions on the resolutions in your packet? Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, I'd like to discuss resolution 18,
Okay,
designating the budget officer. After seeing the standing committee list and the previous years of a budget officer not sitting on committee because it's such a big job. which I understand and see, but I have a problem with designating a budget officer for budget and for the personnel administration, higher education. Those are really two large committees. And I think they're kind of tied together. I feel that there's a conflict of interest here.
Any other discussion on resolution number 18?
Oh, yes, and I also like a roll call. Sorry.
Roll call vote. Okay, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. I too voiced some concern on that. I think Supervisor Thomas, as budget officer last year, did a phenomenal job, but he's also been budget officer for several years. He's worked very hard, but I recognize the time and commitment that went in by Supervisor Bramer last year. And looking at the committee assignments this year, Supervisor Thomas is chairing 2 and on 3 additional committees. Whereas last year as budget officer, he chaired that single committee and attended all those meetings and put in a lot of work. I think there's times where things will come before personnel and then also before the budget, 2 very important positions with significant authoritative responsibilities. And I too would have concerns on that. And as much respect as I have for you, Supervisor Thomas, I think we have 20 members on this board and both are incredibly important positions. And I do also have concerns about that resolution and respectfully will be voting no on it.
Okay, Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, just point of order that deals with the appointment of Supervisor Thomas. I believe that's the question that's represented in that resolution. And you can vote yes or no on that resolution. As far as the other editorializing on other issues, those should be saved for when those issues come to the fore.
Okay, thank you.
Also, I just would also mention that the mentioning any supervisor by name during our debate is frowned upon by our rules. So, I mean, if you feel that the budget officer should not also be this or not also be that, you're not just talking about today, but you're talking about tomorrow and years to come. So you should refrain from mentioning any supervisor by name or any group of supervisors by any type of association. And those are clearly stated in the sections of our rules. If you want to know the numbers, just let me know. Thank you.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. Following on that, I do have concerns about an individual being both the budget officer and the personnel chair. As personnel chair last year, it was a lot of work, and it is a lot of work to be the budget officer as well, especially in the fall time when we were going over the budget, as those of you who have been in that setting certainly understand. And one of my concerns is about the consolidation of those 2 positions really eliminates another voice. I know that when I was in those meetings as personnel chair, and then there's another person as budget officer, you can bounce ideas off of one another and kind of get a sense of, can you come to the middle? Are you already in agreement? Then you're on the right track. When there's only one person there doing both those roles, that gives me a lot of concern. And I think there should be a second person to bounce ideas off of and to gauge where we are going in this particular matter. And the budget officer doesn't need to be a supervisor. We can have a paid professional in that particular role to help guide our finances as we go forward. We are certainly a professional organization here at the county, $165 million budget, wherever we are at this point. It's really important that we go forward in a professional manner. And so I will also be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on resolution number 18? Anybody else? Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable either. The budget officer is what we think is the most important position on this board. Henceforth, we pay them $6,000. So so the time and commitment that goes into that job, which I can't say his name, we're all going to get in the guessing game now if you can't say a supervisor's name, which is absurd. But for the individual, the budget officer, to also be chairman of probably the second or third most important committee on this board and in this county, I think is a disservice to the county residents. They want the best and most qualified on all the positions of chairmanship and vice chairs. That's not happening. We all know that. So with all due respect, I'll be voting no also on this because I can't support having one individual who is the leader of the most important committee, also being the leader of the second or third most important committee, and the time involved and needed goes off the charts. I know last year's personnel director spent countless hours. And I don't believe that individual, that lady could have done both jobs either. I would have voted against her to be both the budget officer and the personnel director. It doesn't make sense because it's so consuming. So for the betterment of the county and of this board, let's separate that and feel free to designate someone else to lead the personnel committee. That to me only makes sense, but more importantly, it's good government. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Seaver and then Supervisor Conover.
Thank you. I do have a question regarding the procedural aspect of the rules. And while I appreciate Supervisor Conover's offer to provide me the exact area in Robert's rules where you can't use the name of another supervisor, I thought that was in a derogatory sense, but at this point in time, what I would be looking for, and I don't see this reflected in our rules this year proposed, but last year we did vote by resolution for a parliamentarian. The parliamentarian's job is to give advice to the chair. Supervisor Conover called a point of order. That point of order was not ruled upon. In our rules for next year, we have been very specific, but we still follow Robert's rules. I would ask that you please rule on Supervisor Conover's point of order and clarify for me whether it's appropriate or not to be utilizing a supervisor's name, particularly in such a complimentary light of which I just did, which was not derogatory by any way, shape, or form.
Okay. I'll ask
Thank
the
you.
parliamentary, is there anything in the rules to say that we can't state a supervisor's name? I think it was generally stated last year, correct?
It is.
It was derogatory. Excuse me, the point of order is,
Oh.
we're all supposed to be silent while you decide on it,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Including me.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
get the handle
Thank
on
you.
this stuff. Yeah. Supervisor Conover, do
Yeah.
you have a
Section
specific-
4321 says that members should refrain from attributing a member's motives, and 4323 says that they should avoid use of a member's name because it's not necessary to speak to the issue. Now, I think that the point that's being made here is that the appointment of positions to committees is an authority provided to the chair of this board, not to the board. Number two, Mr. Thomas is a wonderful budget officer. And also, I should also say that,
Point of order.
yeah, point of order, that our
Yes.
budget officer is a wonderful,
room, point
does
of
a
order.
wonderful job. And
Please,
he,
hold on.
any supervisor can declare themselves whether they have a conflict
Point
of
of order
interest. It's not
I have a point
necessary.
of order.
Mr. Chairman, you have to rule on the point of order. I have a point of order.
What is your
Mr.
point of order?
The supervisor just said we can't call anybody by his name. And then he proceeds to call somebody by his name. the hypocrisy there is overwhelming. So,
Thank
so,
you.
so I would like you to rule on point of order.
You are correct.
Thank you.
So we have a
Thank-
wonderful budget officer and each supervisor can determine themselves whether they have a conflict of interest. That's up to that particular supervisor to determine whether they're comfortable or not comfortable with a conflict of interest. I mean, I think we all know what's going on here. And so I would say to everyone, I'm certainly going to support this resolution. Thank you.
Section 4323 of the Robert's Rules of Order say avoid using the members' names. Stated in the book of Robert's Rules.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm referring specifically to section 42 Robert's Rules in our book. Section 15, debate must be confined to the merits of the pending question. Speaker must address the remarks of the chair, maintain a courteous tone, and especially in reference to any divergence of opinion, should avoid injecting a personal note into the debate. To that point, Supervisor Conover clearly injected a personal note to say that clearly he knows what's going on here. Once again, remarks have been respectful, duly noted, and valid upon the previous rules with the board over the last decade. I would please ask that you rule on this point of order and ask Supervisor Conover to avoid injecting any type of those personal notes into our debate.
So noted.
Thank you,
Mr.
Chairman.
Conover, please.
I will.
Thank you. Any other discussions on resolution number 18? Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be supporting the resolution, but I would respectfully request that the chairman, if it's legal to do so, consider appointing a chairman pro tem for the Personnel Committee so we can conduct people's business this coming week and have discussions about possibly appointing another individual to that committee. But I will be supporting the designating of the budget officer.
Okay. Anybody else wishes to discuss number 18? Well, I will. Am I allowed to discuss that resolution for the board on my appointment?
Debate, you have to step down.
Oh.
Are you asking?
I'll step down.
You're asking me.
Supervisor Leggett, will you take over the meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And when you're ready, I'll recognize you. Can you go to the podium, please?
I am there.
Okay, thank you. Proceed.
Yeah. It was a great honor for me to appoint Supervisor Thomas to both positions. And I talked to Supervisor Thomas about being the personnel chair.
Point of order, Mr. Leggett.
Your point of order, Supervisor
we-
Beatty.
Thank you very much. My point of order is, we just got done discussing, you can't mention anyone's name.
Well, I'm sorry.
Then why I'm flabbergasted that one side.
Okay, so thank you, Supervisor Beatty.
I
So
haven't,
recognized. Speaker, please refrain from using supervisors' names specifically. The supervisor from Stony Creek, perhaps.
The person nominated for the office of personnel chairman and budget, I discussed the dual roles and if he could handle those positions, and he was in full agreement with all his positions. So I'm very comfortable with my appointments and I will not be changing. Thank you.
I now return the chair back to Chairman Garrity. Thank you.
Any discussion, any other resolutions? Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. Just give me 1 second. I would like to discuss the rules of the board. It's resolution 32.
Okay.
And I have a question about the meaning of one of the provisions. Let me just get there on the new rules, sorry. This is on page 6 of the version that we have prepared for today, I believe. It's on page 6 of 8. At the bottom there, number 5. I believe this was discussed in committee the other day, but I am still a little confused about exactly what that is meant to mean. I know that when we are attending committee meetings and we're not on the committee, we're not voting members of the committee. We are typically allowed to participate basically as members of the public as far as making comments when we're called upon by the chair of that committee. Is there anything else that I'm missing in here as to that paragraph?
The intention of that paragraph was to help clarify a concern about an appearance of violating the open meetings law and the appearance at committee meetings of supervisors being present and seated in a manner so that the general public could not determine whether that supervisor was a member of the committee or not. And it is an attempt to advise the board that in this current structure and with social distancing and using this boardroom, that there's an appearance that's created when there's more than 10 supervisors sitting at the table for a committee meeting on whether that's a quorum for the board that's been formed. There was an ancillary question raised by a supervisor, which was an excellent question, but not directed to the intent or purpose of this paragraph. And that question was whether a supervisor who is not assigned to a committee is allowed to remain during the executive session of that committee. That was raised during the governance meeting on Tuesday. I undertook additional research on that specific question after the meeting, and it was clear under the public officers law that an executive session is limited to the members of the public body that's meeting. So, for example, when a committee is meeting, the members of that committee are authorized to be present in executive session, and the only other parties authorized to be present are those that the committee permits. For that purpose, I made an administrative recommendation to be consistent with this county's past practice, which there was no objection to by the chair, county administrator, or the clerk for the board. And that change would be to state that board members shall be permitted to attend an executive session held by a committee for which they are not a member. That would, as part of these rules, ensure that no particular committee could choose to exclude a particular board member for whatever reason that committee may have. And it would provide every member of this board the equal opportunity to attend, not to participate, but to attend the executive session of any committee. So if there is a board member who would be willing to make a motion to amend paragraph D5 to add an additional sentence, the additional sentence I would recommend is that board members shall be permitted to attend an executive session held by a committee for which they are not a member.
I'm happy to make that motion to amend
I'll
five,
second.
D5.
We have a motion by Supervisor Bramer. Do we have a second by Supervisor Beatty? Do we have discussion on the amendment? Supervisor McGowan?
I thought during that meeting, we scratched that one. I have a blip in my memory.
I don't. Supervisor Bramer or Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you. We did talk at length about removing number 5 after there was incredible controversy over the idea of where members would sit, how they would participate. And hearing the county attorney's explanation on this, I also question, even though other members would be invited to attend executive, if they would be permitted to engage in any type of discussion in executive if they were not a member of the committee as well. We spent considerable time talking about this and some easy practical solutions that could be done administratively in terms of either utilizing the committee room or a table in the middle or where people would sit. But I thought our general consensus after debate on Tuesday, which I very much appreciate that debate, was to remove number 5.
Do you mind if I
Yes,
defer to the
Thank you.
county administrator?
I'm just referencing the red line that the clerk of the board put out after we had that meeting, and it appears that I'm looking at the green which signifies changes that were made during that committee meeting, the Government Ops Committee. And it appears the only change that was made on Tuesday was the word voting was inserted in the final sentence. I guess it's the only sentence to say that or participate in a committee meeting as a voting member of the committee.
Okay. Supervisor Seaver, would you like to finish?
If I may just respond. After I saw the minutes come out with that change, I did in fact contact the county attorney and ask about the specific one. Once again, I believe that at the end of the discussion, number 5 was agreed upon to be removed.
To be deleted?
Yes.
Okay. Supervisor Stroud, Chair.
I was chair of that committee, and we did discuss paragraph number 5 of section D. It was a consensus of the committee, and it appeared to me, even a consensus of those present, that we keep 5. The concern
Please speak into the mic.
was the same concern that the attorney had, and that is one of appearances, and that's the very word that I used at the meeting, in agreement with county council's concern, is that we're having a committee meeting. It looks like a board of supervisors meeting, and that it would behoove us to make it look, at least to the public, that it is more of a committee structure, although others of us present. And it was even discussed at this meeting that perhaps we should go back to the committee room, because it was always clear in the committee room that the committee sat at the table. The other board of supervisors in public had chairs other than at the table, and it was clear that it was a committee meeting. And that appeared to be the consensus. Although I do agree with the amending of it, I think we need to leave it in.
Okay. Anybody else on number 32, part D5? Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, so for clarification then, an elected official can sit in on an executive session and can speak during an executive session. Is that crystal clear? I'll ask our county attorney.
If the board enacts these rules, yes.
Okay, so we have to enact a rule so that the people who elected us can actually have their representatives speak. I think that's a good rule. Thank you.
We have that, and we have an amendment.
Well, and just to clarify, so there's no misunderstanding, so that a member who's not, a board member who's not a committee member has that right to participate not just in public session, but in executive session as well, which is closed to the public.
And a follow-up, if I may?
Sure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And that's not up to the committee chair to determine that in executive session. The committee chair in executive session can't say, oh, by the way, supervisor from the 3rd Ward of Glens Falls, I won't mention her name, you cannot speak in executive session. It's not up to the chairman or the chair. Well, they're almost all men. So it's not up to the chairman to decide whether or not someone can speak in executive session. Is that correct, Mr. Attorney?
Under state law, that would be the effect. However, by enacting these rules and that particular rule and the sentence that I'm proposing, it removes that ability or power from the committee to exclude any individual board member from an executive session.
But I'm speaking specifically to the participation in executive session, sir.
Yes,
So they, yes, they can talk. Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay. Any, Supervisor Bramer?
Not debate. I don't think we voted on the amendment, did we?
No. Not yet.
Okay.
So do we need to vote now? Or do we vote? Okay,
We do a roll call?
do we vote now or do you want to vote on, we have one other, Supervisor Diamond?
Thank you. Just a question around the rules that we're going to adopt.
Is this on a different one, Supervisor?
I do. Is that at a different time, the meeting? Because I thought
Can
we're-
we vote on D5 and then we have?
Okay, sure,
Okay,
thank you.
Can we have a roll call, please?
roll call vote on D5? Okay,
Chairman, just to clarify what we're voting on, are we voting on the adding of the word voting, or that's in there? Or are we voting on the deletion of this? What exactly is the motion before?
hold on. I'll ask the clerk to read what. she
So
believes.
the amendment that the word voting is already part of this.
Correct.
What you're voting on is an amendment to add another section, another sentence on number 5, which will say, board members shall be permitted to attend executive sessions for committees for which they are not a member.
Thank you.
You have a question for the clerk?
Yes, is there a possibility to amend that to attend and participate? Because it seems clear based on some of the language that it's up to the chair of the committee whether or not someone is called on to be able to participate in executive session. So it would just be nice to have that say attend and participate. I don't think that's out of the question.
I'm fine amending my amendment to that
Thank you.
effect.
Okay, before we, do you have something before we ask to amend it? Supervisor Hogan?
It seems as though discussion of this particular, of the rules of the board is far from over. Should we wait to amend until we've finished the discussion? Or do we have to vote on each amendment? Should there be more?
If we're going to amend the rule, I guess we'd have to vote on each one individually.
They have to be voted on individually. Okay.
Okay, is that all the discussion on this? So I'll ask the Supervisor Beatty and Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor Beatty agree to the amendment to this.
Yes.
And I agree. Correct.
Okay, so are we set to vote? Let's vote on D5. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt.
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Drossy,
Yes.
Ms. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Merlino,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. Wild,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Chairman Garrity.
Yes. Okay, any other discussion on Resolution 32? Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
So we do need a small amendment to page 5 on the standing committee list. We, under county facilities, we left off weights and measures.
Oh. So somebody might come on or make a resolution request we add weights and measures. Motion by Supervisor Wild, second by Supervisor Stroud. Any discussions on adding weights and measures? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's carried. Any other discussion on resolutions? Supervisor Diamond. Supervisor Diamond?
Are we still on the rules?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
32? Yes.
Yes. The question I have is last year, year 2021, there was a lot of debate about the idea of bringing resolutions to the floor with a two-thirds of the majority. And at that point in time in 2021, I agreed those were the rules that we adopted. Having experienced that conversation in 2021, would it make sense to change that from 2/3 to the majority?
Is that in our rules
I
now?
think it says 2/3 to bring a resolution. I know at times there was resolutions trying to be brought to the full board. And because there wasn't a 2/3 vote, those resolutions weren't spoken to or discussed. My suggestion, if we're going to adopt new rules, and that was an issue in 2021, maybe we ought to consider changing that from a 2/3 majority to just a majority of
Simple majority?
simple majority.
We had discussion.
Is that a motion or?
You make, is that a motion?
I would put that motion forward to discuss that, yeah.
We have a motion by Supervisor Diamond, second by Supervisor Dickinson. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, Supervisor Leggett.
thank you. What's the chapter and verse so I can look it up here that we're talking about?
Page 73. Oh, I know, it's right here on it, so following closely, sorry.
Supervisor Diamond, was there specific language?
Well, I was just pointing out the 2/3 that we simply just changed that to a simple majority, bringing resolutions to the floor. And that's basically.
Are you talking about E3,
Yeah,
Supervisor Diamond? All questions shall be, do you mind if I speak?
no, go ahead.
Okay, all resolutions shall be decided by a majority of the total weighted voting power of the board unless otherwise required by law herein. All questions shall be decided by a weighted vote in accordance with the terms of local law 9 of 2021 as it may be amended from time to time. When the rules of order, there is reference to a majority vote or 2/3 vote of the board. It means majority of the voting power of the members of the board, 2/3 of the voting power of members of the board as defined in local law 9. Is that what you're referencing? Change that to simple
I
majority?
think that's part of it, yes. In
Oh,
fact, it's a
that's
matter
not all
that there were resolutions that were trying to be brought to the floor of the full board meeting. And because of the 2/3 language in our rules, those resolutions couldn't be addressed or discussed. And I'd like to have a change to that.
Okay.
If we can.
I'll defer to county attorney, and I think Amanda found some information. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think I can help here. I think the piece that we're really talking about is on the final page. It's F2. No standing rule of the board shall be rescinded, suspended, or amended, or any additional rule or order added thereto unless it be by 2/3 vote. So this would apply to any change. If you change that to majority, apply to any change in the rules. Any rescission, any suspension, any amendment, any additional rule, whatever. If the intent is only to apply the majority as opposed to the 2/3 to the process of bringing a resolution that didn't pass through committee to the floor at the board meeting, probably the more efficient way to do that would be earlier in the rules. In B, this is on page 3. B3 in the second paragraph, the second sentence. Any resolution timely filed with the clerk but not approved through the established committee structure in advance of a board meeting shall require a waiving of the rules to be considered by the board during the regular meeting, aside from those resolutions which are considered to be administrative or procedural or an emergency nature.
Is that
Yeah.
Supervisor Diamond?
Yeah, so I think what you would essentially have to say is you would replace shall require a waiving of the rules to be considered to shall require a majority vote of the board to be considered.
So is that your can you
It is, yeah.
change? We have a motion. Supervisor Dickinson, do you agree to that?
Good.
Any other discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
B3 has been amended.
Thank you.
Anything on 32? Supervisor Hogan?
Thank you. Page 4C11. A motion to adjourn shall always be in order and shall be subject to debate. That was changed to not subject, from not subject to debate. I'm just asking the board to take a moment and consider whether we really want to get rid of that off-ramp. We've used it pretty handily before.
411. We've done it without debating. Oh, sorry, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. With all due respect to the supervisor who brought this topic up, upon reviewing the last decade of the rules of the board, it does seem since 2010 that it used to be just with a majority vote to take a motion to adjourn. I don't know at what point in time, without looking at my notes, that was removed, but it looks like it's added back in to have a vote to adjourn. So for years, we always had it where you had to vote. So, I mean, I have no problem with having to vote to adjourn. So certainly that way it doesn't ever limit debate. But I think I would be opposed to that change, with all due respect.
So you want to take out subject to debate, just the motion to adjourn, correct?
Personally, I have no problem with it either way. I just wanted everybody to be sure what they were voting for. You can't stop the proceedings if you need to.
Yeah. It's up to the board, whatever you would like. Leave it or take it out. I guess it's Supervisor Thomas.
Well, even if there's a motion to adjourn and it is subject to debate, it's still subject to debate, and that becomes the question on the floor. So it's up to the chair whether there's a vote or whether there isn't.
Okay.
So I don't see what difference it makes, really.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else on number 32? Supervisor Bruno. Supervisor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2 of 8, B, regular meetings of Board of Supervisors, I'd like to make a motion to amend that to add a second board meeting each day of the month. Probably be scheduled the day of the Personnel and Finance, the same day as that. Purpose of that is we could discuss committee proposals, items, etc. at each meeting, the 2 meetings, and maybe do away with the committee.
All right, we have that discussion. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairman. This was going back to the supervisor from Johnsburg and C11 there. And just for clarification, is it going to let stand C11 as written?
It is going to stand as written because there can be debate offered.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, sir. Supervisor Brammer.
Back to Supervisor Bruno's motion, if I'm allowed to say that. I will second that. I will second the motion. I don't know that we should get rid of the committees. I think it would be a good idea to maximize our efficiency, because a lot of times we are debating things 3 or 4 times over and over again. We're going through the regular committee, then it goes through personnel, then it goes through finance, and then it comes through the full board, and it's debated in all 4 of those places. So I support this idea in order to twofold, have an opportunity to debate some of these items sooner. Like if people come to the personnel and finance meeting, they will be there for the full board meeting, and we won't have to hash it out twice, perhaps. I'm not sure if it'll work out that way exactly, but the other thing is that, as I mentioned before, we are a professional operation here, and we have a lot of work being done, and the department heads often have things that need to come up faster than our once-a-month meetings. And my final reason for wanting this is that hopefully it will make our meetings a little shorter. We've been having hours-long meetings. So maybe if we divide it up and have two a month, a regular meeting twice a month, on the day when we're already here for committee meetings, it will help us maximize our efficiency. Thank you.
Okay, so Can I ask Supervisor, can you state what you want Supervisor Bruno into the mic? Because I couldn't catch all of it.
Yeah, it was.
Can you talk into the microphone?
Sorry. To amend that, to add a second board meeting.
Second board meeting.
Yep.
Each
meeting with the
month?
Full board each month. And I just suggested, as did Supervisor next to me, I won't mention her name, that it be conducted on the same day as personnel and finance. I probably misspoke saying to do away with the committee, that little glib there, but it would streamline the process somewhat, and also, as alluded to by the supervisor here, hopefully shorten one of the meeting or both of them. They'd be a little shorter, and maybe we could cut to the chase, as they say, especially with personnel and finance. Anyway, so that's, my motion was to amend.
To add a second board meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Supervisor Driscoll, then Supervisor Conover.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly don't disagree with my friend and desk neighbor.
Let's go along.
Last year, I thought that it was a good idea for the establishment of the executive committee. That was the committee that met when we needed to meet. We didn't meet when we didn't need to. I believe that the dates of those meetings were generally a set day of the month, so we could plan ahead, put it in our calendars to be available in case there was a need to meet on that particular day, to debate, troubleshoot, whatever we needed to address. Months that we don't need to meet, to me, it's presents a hardship for people who have distance to travel or need to get back to other types of meetings. People like myself who, have to punt to another time clock. I would, whether we call it a committee or not, I would like to suggest that we look at reestablishing an ad hoc type of a committee where if there was the need each month to meet, we could do that. It wouldn't just have to be the chairs of those committees. It could be the entire board. Just a suggestion.
Okay, anybody else? I had Supervisor Conover and Supervisor McGowan.
Yeah, I don't, on its face, have any objection to a meeting if we need to meet. And, but I think a proposal like this really needs to be fully vetted with staff. It needs to be articulated what days each month. And it's not coming out of staff, it's coming out of the board itself. And then that can be worked through government, I assume government ops, and we can then bring it forward in the kind of form that I think it needs to be brought forward with. So on its face, I don't object to it. We're all paid to serve. If we need additional meetings, but I think that we really, and something like this really needs to be, I think, as you see here, we state specific days, so many become part of our agenda, etc. So I'm not hearing tremendous objection to the idea, but I do think some detailing on this is going to be needed. And I think it's important that we have meetings when we need to have meetings. So I would say that, if we could defer this decision until we have something very specific in front of us, that would be my preference to just a general statement within our rules that we're going to have a second meeting in the month.
Supervisor McGowan, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I did bring this up to the organizational meeting and try to explain the process of maybe eliminating the committees and having two board meetings where we were all here. And now that we've kind of adopted the rules to a simple majority, it would probably make it easier to move things along. So I brought it up back then. I brought it up before, before the organizational meeting, and I really wanted discussion on it. And, I wasn't able to get that. If you think about it, it really makes sense if we could have 2 board meetings with all the committees, our committees are here, because that would really help us out on the problem where we have too many people and not enough, or people don't understand that we're having actually a board meeting. So, I brought it up for discussion, and, and I see, one person shaking his head that, disagrees with that. I thought it would be a good idea to discuss it and to look out the possibilities, because it is a big change. But to keep the unity here, or a bond, I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful wearing this hat, but I'm making a statement today, all right? I was gonna wait, but since I have the floor, if it's all right.
Well, if we're talking on this resolution, that's what we're talking
All
about.
right,
the resolution.
but I like the idea of the 2 board meetings, and I would like to have more of a discussion on eliminating these committees and working, not eliminating committees, but you have your committees and the board here so we can discuss it over, so we don't have to hash this thing over 2, 3, 4 times.
Thank you. Supervisor Hogan?
Thank you. Bringing this back around through another committee would open, while would allow time for staff to weigh in. It would also reopen the rules of the board for debate and discussion. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'd like to resolve these rules today and move on with our lives. It is also my understanding that it is far easier to cancel a meeting than it is to schedule a meeting. So if we can get these on the calendar and we don't need them, we can cancel them.
Supervisor Stroud, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I agree with the concept that Supervisor, that's sitting 2 down from me, has come up with. I think it merits discussion, but it is involved. And like the supervisor is sitting over diagonally from me, he said this merits a discussion and some thoughtfulness, and I agree. So I think, and especially if we go to a majority vote to change the rules, which I think is a good thing too, because whatever. But can we accept the rules today with the idea that I'm hearing a consensus that we like Brad's idea and that we investigate that, but at this time we need some rules to go forward. I think this is too complicated to address right now.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you. I know this is my second time. I will be very brief. What the amendment is today, right now, is not the greater proposal that was mentioned just a moment ago that I think a lot of us think warrants discussion. The amendment today is simply to add onto our calendars the potential for a regular board meeting on those set days. We have set days for personnel and finance. It's always the first Thursday, might be the second Thursday. I'm sure the clerk can correct me. That's all this amendment is. It's not saying we're going to eliminate anything else. It's just to add this to our calendars as a potential meeting, and as was already mentioned, we can certainly cancel it if there's nothing to be discussed at that time. I'm sure there will be, but I do want to make one quick note about what was said a moment ago by my colleague across the table, is that the amendment of the rules switching to a simple majority. I myself take no position, I don't think, on that particular issue, but I think that would need to amend F2 that was mentioned earlier on the last page, and I don't think we did that.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
We did. I thought we did.
No, B3. Yeah.
Because we're still talking. Administrator Moore just wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, no, I have a practical question about how this would work with respect to the business that's conducted at board meetings. We have, on page 3, you'll see we have a specific agenda for business at board meetings. For most of this stuff, it's clear that you could do that twice a month, public comment, various reports that we do, announcements, et cetera. Where it comes to the resolutions, which is the meat of the business that the board does, if you will, I just would practically want to know what the intent would be for the business of that meeting, because we have the county attorney's office, the clerk of the board's office, my office. We all write resolutions based on what comes out of committee. It takes some time to do that. And if we're going to have a board meeting directly after personnel and finance, obviously you're not going to have any of those resolutions to consider. So that was my question.
That's exact. May I respond?
Sure.
I've given that some thought and I completely agree. It would be untenable for the staff to try to prepare the resolutions that are going to personnel and finance. But those other ones that pass through committee that don't need to go to personnel and finance are technically ready to go.
Okay, not always. My apologies, I didn't have the floor.
I don't have. Well,
They could be ready to go.
we have a motion, we have a second to add a second meeting on the day of personnel, finance. One more discussion, Supervisor Conover.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
too.
I'm going to be voting no on the motion only because I just don't think it's been fully vetted and fully understood. And I think you're hearing some of it here today from the staff. On its face, we're all paid to serve. And so I would say at this point, whatever the proposal is, work it with the staff, work it with it, identify the need, explain the need. I'm not hearing it from the clerk of the board. I'm not hearing it from the county administrator. Perhaps there's certain times of the year where we're busier than others, where a second meeting, we might want to incorporate a second meeting, but not necessarily every month. And I don't like telling the public that we're going to have a meeting and then we cancel it, because there's communication responsibilities that we have here. There's responsibilities of law dealing with advance time for public notices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So on the amendment, I'm going to have to vote no, but in terms of the idea that was advanced, I'm certainly willing to entertain the idea, but sitting here today, I'm just obligated to have to vote no. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Leggett.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what the supervisor from Bolton just said, that whereas this may be a good idea, we have no idea what the heck we would be doing on that second meeting. I request a roll call for this. Thank you. I'll be voting no.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to clearly identify the need, explain the need, and also reflect upon the clerk and administrative feedback in 2021 on this exact concept. While the chairman, of course, it's your right to remove committees as you see fit and then approved by this board. We've removed the executive committee, identifying the exact intent that we talked about all last year that was voted on nearly unanimously last year during our standing rules discussion. That executive committee idea would now encompass the entire board of supervisors as a second meeting after personnel and finance, should it be needed. I don't see any issue with having to cancel or call on something if in fact it's required. As we saw this year, it did have some significant impacts on a couple departments that desperately needed to have a resolution presented. I do think it would increase efficiency. I feel this way because last year, many supervisors indicated their desire for less committees and less committee members on those committees. But I've also heard much frustration last year when people would walk out of meetings saying, this isn't efficient. This is taking too much time. I have other things to do. I run a town. I have a business. I have a class to teach. Everyone had different complaints about that. I myself attended all 195 out of 196 meetings, which brings up a concern I have on a different resolution. But as it relates specifically to this, the need here to identify the need is efficiency. To identify the need is to help our department heads. To identify the need is to address the concerns made by other supervisors. To further explain the need and explain the reason for the resolution, I think that you're hearing a majority, or at least several members here today, say they would like to support this type of a resolution and add on that second meeting, noting Supervisor Strauss' thoughtful email as described, my supervisor from Queensbury, who's the town supervisor, his need and thoughtful comments that were identified by the supervisor in Bolton just last week or 2 weeks ago about an idea of workshops. And if in fact my supervisor from Glens Falls representing the East End, if in fact his motion could be reviewed to make the changes to the bylaws to a simple majority versus a 2/3 majority, I have been persuaded that perhaps that is the pertinent way to go to address all the concerns of this board. So I will be voting in favor of this amendment and looking forward to this being a pending item on the supervisor from Queensbury, who chairs legislative and rules and government operations, hopefully in February, to further talk about this in detail. And my last comment on that point is there are administrative changes to identify the clerk and the administrative responsibilities. Last year was brought up that our county attorney identified a need in having, and a good need that the clerk had agreed with, perhaps not having our committee meetings on a Monday following a board meeting. It is an awful lot of work from one of our board meetings. So perhaps we could move our committee meetings to a Tuesday schedule to afford at least the county attorney and county clerk in identifying that need and explaining that concern by our administrative staff. I know that's not something for the rules of the board, but I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, to take that into consideration for our department heads.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Driscoll, you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Chairman. This proposed meeting would be 12 days from today. We've already discussed that it would be a hardship on a lot of our administrative staff. We've also heard from supervisors that think that we need to discuss this, vet it, go in there, with all of the i's dotted and t's crossed. I would just offer an amendment if people are interested that we look to schedule this that first week in March to give us time to make sure that we're going into this the right way. So, thank you.
Supervisor Bruno, you had your hand up, then Supervisor Wells.
Yeah, I just wanted to state that.
Can you talk into the mic? Because I can't.
All right.
I'm sorry.
The idea here is to make the board more efficient.
Right.
Okay, I was appalled a number of times this year when I sat here, and I'm not denigrating any supervisor, like people have said, they have other things to do, other commitments. But I sat here and at least half the members of the board had left. Again, I'm not criticizing them. They have other commitments. The problem was the meeting dragged on and on and on.
Right.
So what I'd like to do is make it more efficient, allow for the full board to act on these things. I mean, I don't know how, when we voted in those meetings, I was kind of scratching my head wondering, how can we do this when half the supervisors aren't here? So that's the point from my perspective.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Supervisor Wells, last word.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm not sure I understand everything that we're talking about. I know we want to be more efficient. So, but the devil's in the details. So I'd like to make a motion specifically for this one amendment to table it, return it back to the government ops and legislative and rules, and to please make it a priority to have this discussed in length at their next meeting so that we can have another proposal in front of this board for the next time we meet in February. We have the ability to do special meetings if we need to. I think let's do this right. Let's not jump into it and say we're going to fix it as we go forward. Let's make sure we get it right before we make a decision. So
Yeah.
I have to vote no on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, without voting, I believe the consensus of this room is everybody agrees we should do something. We just got to get to where we want to be. And I think, is that a true, is that pretty fair statement that we do want to do this, but we just want time to sort out the administrative angles? Is that it, what I'm hearing, or no? Is that not what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
That's wise.
I'd like to vote on it.
Yeah, we're going to vote.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Okay. But
Please.
I'm sorry, I'm out of turn. May I?
Well, sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Your number this third time, so.
I very much appreciate that. And I very much appreciate the standing rules being enforced this year again, that we have this right to debate on numerous occasions for as long as it takes for good government. So thank you for not cutting off that debate. Mr. Chairman, I would just say that, yes, I'm certainly going to support this amendment, but I hope to your point, that you will make it a priority that every month we're going to continue to work on this topic of 2 board meetings and reducing our committee schedule for more efficiency. Again, about the workshops or the full board. So thank you for making that commitment here today.
100% agree with what Supervisor Bruno said. I agree with everybody. We've got to run our committees in a better fashion. This will help alleviate the department heads. I don't want to leave any department head or anything that needs to be hanging out there. I just think we need a little more time to come set on it, but we'll vote. Is that all right? We'll do a vote on it, up or down. Now, voting against it doesn't mean we're opposed to it. We just want more time to set the rules. That's what I'm hearing. So, what are we voting on? Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Liggett.
thank you. So what is it we plan to vote on?
Well, that's what I've just asked the clerk to recite.
I have
Thank
the
you,
mo-
sir.
I have the motion as being to add a second board meeting each month on Personnel Finance Day.
So that's the motion. Okay, is everybody okay with voting on that? Supervisor Driscoll?
You just, we didn't give a date. I mean, as to when that would begin. What I just heard from the clerk.
If the person who made the motion is okay starting in March, I would be fine with that as well.
March? March.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and so we're voting on a resolution to schedule a second board meeting on the Personnel Finance Day, starting in the month of March.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Supervisor Thomas.
How do you know that's the best day to have a second board meeting? There you go. Maybe
Right.
the day is a better day.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, maybe we find out by trial and error. And then if we find out that we need if we find out it doesn't work,
Smart government.
then we make an adjustment because we've come to agreement. We can adjust these rules. I think we're coming to agreement, which I appreciate today. We're coming to agreement that perhaps we can adjust these rules on the fly. But we're going to start in March. We're going to schedule a second board meeting. That gives us a whole month to see where we are. And if that doesn't work out, then we'll find another date. So is everybody okay to go ahead with the vote? Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Leggett,
Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
No.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
No.
Mr. Drossy,
Yes.
Ms. Hope,
Yes.
excuse me, Ms. Hogan, Mr. Dickinson,
No.
Mr. Merlino,
No.
Mr. Stroud,
No.
Mr. Wild,
No.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
No.
Ms. Runyon,
No.
Mr. Conover,
No.
Chairman Garrity.
Yes.
Okay. You have 548 votes in favor, so it passes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
How are we going to set the agenda and set the date? It's just, are we done? Are
Excuse
we
me?
going to assign that to someone so we know what we're doing when we have this board meeting?
We'll set the date like we do on every agenda. We'll go through the clerk of the board. Okay. All right, let's move on. Any other discussion on rules of the board?
No.
Supervisor Diamond.
Just clarity on page 8 under F, general. It says during 2022, no standing rules of the board shall be rescinded, suspended, or amended. Any additional rules or orders, therefore, unless by 2/3 vote. Do we want to change 2/3 to simple majority to reflect the changes earlier in the day?
Are you making that a motion?
Yes.
You have a motion by Supervisor Driscoll, change that Supervisor Dixon. You seconding that?
Yes.
We have a second discussion. Okay, let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. All right. Anything else on 32? Okay, anything? Okay, Supervisor?
Thank you. May I?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
I-
Multiple times last year, we heard from our parliamentarian, and we also heard from our training during our parliamentarian training back in March or whenever that was. But I've brought up several times the issue of quorums, and I want to simplify that issue. I heard very clearly on Tuesday that there was a request for a succinct argument regarding quorums. And at this point in time, I just want to address one of the three concerns that I had about the quorum. If in fact we establish quorum, could it be consistent with Robert's rules, please, that when we identify that we're here, that we're present, that we stay for the voting, and that if we get up, and perhaps many supervisors have, or several have a obligation that requires them to walk out, but on a regular basis, showing a pattern, I think that can become a problem, particularly whether you're voting in, if you get up and you leave, your vote is automatically assumed to be in the negative. Robert's rules state that if you've established quorum, if you get up during the voting, and we're all elected to be here and vote for our constituents. I understand the exception to the rule, and all of us have emergencies and schedules, and hopefully in talking about two full board meetings versus committee in the future, we can really make this efficient. And that won't be as necessary. But could we look at being consistent with Robert's rules? So when you say you're here, if you get up and leave during voting, your vote is in the affirmative versus the negative. You know, it's my understanding in researching this with NACO and talking with NISAC and with looking at Robert's rules that it would be consistent. And our rules are a little more restrictive than that. And I know this is the discussion for standing rules. And I wondered if I could please make that motion so that if you're here and you vote present, if you get up during the voting or during any vote, if you're not sitting in your chair to make that vote, or on Zoom, of course, right now the governor has allowed remote meetings, that your vote would be in the affirmative as opposed to the negative.
So you want to add that to resolution 32?
Correct, as it relates to establishing quorums and voting.
So that's your motion, a motion by Supervisor Siebert.
Yes, please.
Do we have a second to that? Supervisor Hogan, are you seconding? Okay, we have a second by Supervisor Hogan. Do we have discussion? Okay, we have Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, we're elected officials. We either cast a vote or we don't. Now, the idea that if somebody's not here, that it's cast as a negative, what you need to understand is that that's being interpreted as a negative because it hasn't been cast in the affirmative. So, for example, if it doesn't count toward the affirmative, then therefore it doesn't help you achieve a majority vote. You follow what I'm saying? In other words, that it's not that it is a negative vote, it's just that you're not here, and so therefore it's not counted for the affirmative vote. I think the idea of ascribing a vote, particularly I think to elected officials that may not be here for whatever the reason, is bad. I'm not even sure it's legal, but it's certainly bad in terms of ascribing that vote to an elected official. If you're not here because you're sick,
No, that's not what I'm saying.
if you're not here because you're sick, it's not that your vote is a negative vote. It's just not ascribed to being a positive vote.
Okay, that's a little off topic. Supervisor Stroud?
Yes, thank you. Now, I mean, there have been times when I was here at 9 o'clock and scheduled for committee meetings. And then my assistant schedules me in the afternoons for other meetings. So I have to get up and leave in the middle of a committee meeting to attend another meeting. When some of these meetings, as one of the supervisors directly across from me pointed out, they go at length. And that's one reason why I'm supporting the efficiencies being talked about today. However, I think the details need to be hammered out, but nevertheless, it comes to situations where I have to leave. And I do not want my vote counted one way or the other, just because I had to leave.
Okay, Supervisor Hogan.
I fear there may be some misunderstanding as to what the motion is and what I seconded. If you're here and you say you're present, but you get up to say, go get a donut and come back into the room, that is still present. Are we all agreed on that? You're still present. If you get up to leave to go to another meeting, you are no longer present, correct? We all agree on that.
Yeah.
So the motion was that when you are being counted as present, unless you state otherwise, your vote is in the affirmative. And that is consistent with our current practice. For example, right now, we call a vote. Everybody says aye. And unless you specifically say nay, your vote is counted as a positive. Correct? So it would be consistent with our current practice. That's all the motion was.
That's it? We have concur. Supervisor Seaver, you concur?
I absolutely concur. That was exactly what I was stating, and I'm sorry that it was misunderstood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Dixon.
I understood it the first time, I understood it the second time, and I am definitely opposed to it. If I'm not sitting in this chair, I don't want anybody to assume what my vote is.
Okay.
Positive or negative. I don't want them to assume that. If I come in here and I have to get up for some reason, you guys vote where I'm going. I don't want you.
It's hard to hear you, Dennis.
I don't want you voting for me just because I'm not in the room. Yes or no?
Okay, your point's taken. Craig, Supervisor Leggett, did you have a comment or no?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor from Lake George expressed it well, and I want to appreciate Supervisor from Johnsburg on explaining, but I don't totally agree with her summation of the motion before us. I think it is best if a person is not in the room to vote, they haven't voted one way or the other, and therefore the supervisor from Bolton, as he had said, it's not as if it's a negative vote, it just doesn't go towards the majority.
That's their practice, I believe. That's a current practice.
But if you are absent, it takes away from the positive.
Supervisor Bremer.
I just want to ask one more clarifying question. This is not about an absence where you don't come to the meeting and you're not present. This is about when you are still here for the meetings. May I ask the clerk?
Sure.
When we don't, like, for instance, in a committee meeting, when we don't specifically say no to a vote, our vote is counted as a yes.
That's correct.
That's our current practice.
But if you leave the room, we count you as not being in the room. We mark the time that you leave and we mark the time that you come back. So if you weren't here during a vote, your vote is not recorded at all.
You have no recorded vote.
Right. In this, I will admit that since we've gone with things with COVID and people coming in and out of Zoom, maybe it's not recorded as well as it used to be in the past. But when people get up and leave, we say you left at, say, 9:35, and if you come back at 9:45, you're back. So if you were out when the vote was taken, we don't say, whatever supervisor wasn't here, but it's noted that you weren't here when a vote was taken. Now, on the board side, if we're on roll calls and you're not in the room, you're marked as absent. So that doesn't count as a no, but it does detract from the yes total.
Supervisor Hogan, you had your hand up.
No, I think my question just got answered. Thank you.
Excuse me?
My question just got answered. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Driscoll, did you have?
Yeah, I did. I had a real life situation on January 6th. We were engaged in a discussion. I needed to get to the men's room. I thought the discussion was still going to be going on when I returned. The vote was, it was a roll call vote. I missed it. Fortunately for me, it was approved the way that I would have voted anyways. But if it hadn't gone that way, and I might have been the deciding vote, I obviously would have been very upset and disappointed. But when Mother Nature calls, you got to do what you got to do.
Okay. Last word.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Driscoll's point is exactly my point. It could have failed because he would have been absent. It would have been counted away from the yeses, particularly when we talk about the rules of the full board. So, I mean, That's all I'm saying is if you're here and you get up for whatever, if it's recorded as absent, you're taking away from the yeses. It's a no. It just means that, you're not recorded and voting anyway, but it's a no. And I would ask our county attorney just to confirm that that's correct. All I'm asking is for us to be consistent with the practices of Robert's rules, with practices of other bodies, and to have a count in the affirmative. I mean, it's
Thank
our
you.
duty to be here.
Supervisor Weil, you did have your hand up, so
Thank
you have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm a little confused this morning. If you're here when the quorum is present and you leave, it's counted as a yes. If you leave to go to the bathroom, if you leave to answer a phone call, if you leave, it's counted, your vote is counted. But if you leave for a meeting because you have a conflict, then it's a no. I think that's what I heard. So how do I get it to be a
Okay.
no? Because I don't want my vote to be counted yes unless I'm here saying yes.
Okay. I'll ask Supervisor Seaver and Hogan, one of you to explain it just one more time so we can get it, please.
If it's okay with Supervisor Hogan, could I ask our county attorney to explain it? Because I think I'm trying and perhaps I'm just not
Okay.
being clear. And I apologize. I thought this was
Very good.
consistent.
Super. County attorney.
As I understand the issue is that the rules of the board require a certain number of weighted votes in order for any resolution to pass.
Questions?
I apologize. That's just my first statement. You'll find sometimes I pause to carefully think about the next sentence. As I understand it, the issue that's being presented by the supervisor from Queensbury is that when an individual is present for the meeting and is part of the quorum, but steps away from the meeting when a vote or a roll call vote is taken, the fact that no vote is recorded is in essence a vote against the resolution because it's not a vote that's counted in the minimum number of weighted votes needed to hit the amount to pass a resolution. So for example, under these proposed rules, the total number of weighted votes is 502. A supervisor who's present at the meeting, or who steps away from the meeting for whatever the reason is according to the amendment from Supervisor Sieber, is in essence being counted as a no vote because it cannot be counted toward the total number of votes to achieve 502. So when an individual does not vote and abstains, which is a separate issue, or is physically not present at the moment the roll call vote is taken, that individual's vote by default, de facto, ends up being a no vote because it's not towards the number of votes required under the weighted vote count to get to 502. Am I stating correctly, the supervisor from Queensbury, the issue, it's not my place to address the motion, but the issue that's in the motion before the board to amend?
You are correct.
Okay. So as I understand it, again, the issue is by not being present at the time the roll call vote is taken, although you're present for the meeting, it's as if you voted no because your weighted votes are part of the total number of votes that fixes the 502 number that's required to pass any resolution. Is there any questions on the issue? I'm not going to weigh in on the procedural or political piece of it, but as far as what the issue is, in not recording a weighted vote And that weighted vote being part of the total weighted vote for the board, it does have an impact because the total weighted vote is 502, which is the total weighted votes of all 20 supervisors for the board. 502 is the majority of all weighted votes for the board.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Amanda said it perfectly. You come, you say here, you're here. You get up and leave, they record the fact that you're not here. It is not a no vote. It's not a yes vote. You did not vote. And that's the point. You did not vote. I always vote with the thought that somebody's going to ask me why I voted how I voted. And I always have in my mind that I should have a reason. And if I am not present, then I don't have a vote. I don't vote yes, I don't vote no. Simple as that.
Okay, we have Supervisor Dixon, Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna throw this out there. So if you're not in the room, if you've come to the meeting and you've got to be pulled away, but you were present, but your vote goes down as a negative towards the total, we've established that.
No, it doesn't.
No,
It does not.
No, it does
It
not.
counts as a no vote, but it goes to the total though. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you. Say that again.
It counts as an absent vote, which detracts from the.
From,
yes total, but
which
it doesn't
detracts
count
from the
as-
majority. Okay, so let's give you an example. You got 5 people on a committee and 2 or 3, I know it'd be tough math for some of the supervisors, so I'll try to keep it simple. You've got,
Easy, please.
well, I heard Mr.
Please, okay.
Fine friend from Lake
Continue.
George
Continue,
having a problem with it.
continue.
So, if you don't want to be counted, okay, if you know your vote will be counted as an absent and be a negative towards the total, you get up and you walk out of the room. That way you don't have to take a vote on it, but you know that the measure won't pass without your vote. Okay, so in my opinion, why don't we just make it simple for all of us? This isn't political by any means. This is just good government. If someone's not here to physically vote, that majority to pass a resolution should be based on the people in the room voting. Makes sense to me. So in other words, if it was 502 to be a majority, and yet there's 150 votes that have gotten up and walked out, then that majority of 502 now gets lowered of the people who actually voted in the room. Does that make sense?
No.
So the people who are in the room voting would dictate the majority or not majority. But everybody wants their vote to be counted. That's how you count it.
May I ask Ms. Seaver and Ms. Hogan a question? Wasn't this mostly about the committee votes? Or was this about full board vote?
For me, it was about both of them, but I was asked to be
Okay.
succinct on Tuesday. I tried to debate this on Tuesday, but no one had an interest in talking about it on the committee, which is why I'm here at a full board where all 20 of us are, to identify a consistent pattern of behavior that perhaps impacts our ability to not only have a quorum, but to have our votes recorded, and why. I don't know for Ms. Hogan, I don't want, excuse me, my supervisor from Johnsburg, if that also is her concern, I would, if okay with you, Mr. Chairman, ask.
Yeah, I'll ask her just
thank-
to answer.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan?
I seconded it because I feel like it's consistent with with the other practice of recording a positive vote as a, when we're voting as a body.
Okay.
But since I have the floor, can I just ask one quick administrative question?
Sure.
Would it be administratively prohibitive in our proceedings to simply record? You do record when people come and go, but on a vote, when someone is counted as present, but for whatever reason leaves the room momentarily, would it be administratively prohibitive to simply record on that vote, supervisor so-and-so abstained or was not in the room, would that be too much to add to your work?
Well, I think there's also a division here between committee and board. So if you're at a board meeting and we're in roll calls and someone isn't here, we mark the roll call. When we print them out, it shows who's absent, who voted yes, who voted no, who abstained. That's
Right.
very clear. As far as committees, when votes come up, we mark who, if someone's left, we just mark, if there was a motion made afterwards, we'd make who made the motion, who seconded it, was it carried, whatever. We don't necessarily say, so-and-so, it was absent, but we can certainly start doing that. We can say who voted in favor, who voted against, who was absent. We can define all of that.
I think
in
that
minutes.
adds a lot of work.
But it's, when we're dealing with the committees that now are going to have 7 members, we are already putting 2 names in. So, it's not that big a deal to just add that line and we're summarizing minutes. So I think it's a even trade-off for us. We can be more succinct on who is voting what, since we're saving a lot of time summarizing other areas based on referring to video.
Based on that, I'll withdraw my motion.
Supervisor Conover? And then
If the motion's being withdrawn, I have no comment.
I'm happy to withdraw my motion, provided that if it becomes an issue, that we bring it up through government ops and we have the debate that's required. That's fine. I'll track it throughout the year and I'll bring it up if I feel it to be a concern. So I'll withdraw my motion. If Supervisor Hogan would withdraw her second. Okay.
So motion's
Thank you.
been withdrawn?
Motion's been withdrawn. I have no comment, other than the quorum is the quorum.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other talk on any other resolutions we have before? Good discussion, I appreciate it. Any discussion from the public? Oh, you have one
Other resolution?
on resolutions? Yes.
Are we, me?
Discussion on resolution?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't know we were closing discussion on resolutions. Are you just closing discussion on the rules of the board? Whatever.
I thought it was resolutions, but go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to discuss, I'd like a roll call on resolution number 20.
Oh, okay,
All right,
all right.
or I'm sorry, I'd like a roll call on number 22.
22,
And if I may discuss 22?
sure.
Thank you. My only concern with this, Mr. Chairman, is that you are the chairman of the board, and last year we did meet 196 times in different committees. I see that you're appointing yourself to the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board with Supervisor Thomas, the Budget Personnel Officer, as your alternate. I recognize your deep commitment to the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board, but I also believe in providing other people opportunity to represent. We all serve within a county that falls within the park, and I think it would be appropriate, while I understand it's your decision on who you appoint to these boards, appointing yourself and not providing another opportunity for a member of the board to participate seems, perhaps inappropriate. While I understand respectfully it's your appointment, I would ask that you reconsider. I'll be voting no on that.
Okay. Any other resolutions? Supervisor McGowan?
We do have Resolution 18 as a roll call.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on resolutions? All right. Anybody from the public to talk on resolutions? Don, anybody from the public discuss resolutions?
Hi, Chairman Garrity. There's nothing on YouTube.
Okay, I guess then we go to vote on resolutions.
Well, no, I
Yes, Supervisor McGowan.
thank you. I guess this is my time I can speak. I was, now that we're done with the resolutions.
We're gonna, if it's pertaining to resolutions, you can speak.
Oh, so I'll have to wait to privilege of the.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right, let's vote on resolutions.
Resolution number 18, designating budget officer. Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
I'd like to comment before I cast my vote on 18. I respect the chairman as I did in 2021. I will again in 2022 respect the chairman that's been elected by this board to make and designate members to his committees that he chooses to do. I understand, I've heard comments from the public or from my colleagues here that there's a tremendous amount of additional work that's going on. And I'm going to vote in favor of the appointment of the budget officer that Mr. Garrity, Chairman, has suggested today. And if it doesn't work out, it can always be changed in the following calendar year. So it's a yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Bruno?
Yeah.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Drossy?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yeah.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yeah.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
May I speak?
Chair's supposed to.
I have to say, I agree with Supervisor Diamond. This is not a personal thing. I believe that our previous budget officer has done a phenomenal job, and he has every time that he sat in their chair. I think he's done a great job. I was concerned with the added workload of such two large committees, so I will be voting yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Seaver?
In the spirit of getting to say something, may I briefly?
Sure.
Thank you. I am respectfully opposing this and voting no, only because I do believe that 93% of women on this board are not represented as a chair of a committee. I also believe that we represent 51% of women in Warren County. I believe the woman that did the job previously was qualified and should have been considered, or another individual who perhaps was also qualified. It's an awful lot of a workload. I respect our budget officer, but I respectfully have an opportunity to vote on this, and my vote was no.
Mr. Beatty?
Since it deals strictly with the person, the budget officer position, I will vote yes. And hopefully that we can look at his work overload, which is maximum, and look at other people for the personnel chairmanship. But I will vote yes for this position.
Mr. Thomas?
I abstain.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 22, appointing representatives to the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board. Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Drossy?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Abstain.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Respectfully, no.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Abstain.
Ms. Runyon?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Abstain.
Resolution passes.
Mhm.
Resolution number 34. This was the floor resolution, and it is amending the Warren County budget. Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Drossy?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Runyon?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 35, this is another floor resolution and is the transfer of funds. Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer? Yes. Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Drossy?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Runyon?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Chairman Garrity?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Need a collective on the rest.
Collective on all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, privilege of the floor. Anybody who wish to address the board? Privilege of the floor. We'll go to the public first.
Hi, Chris Stroud, Queensbury, New York. I was reading through some board meeting minutes, and this is relative to the M&Ms. This is from January 5th, 2017. Supervisor Beatty would like to discuss removing the stipend allocated to the vice chairman position, as he felt the additional $8,000 was not necessary. Same meeting, Supervisor Brock asked Supervisor Beatty to explain his rationale for this proposal. Supervisor Beatty responded that as stewards of the public money, it set an example as to how they expended taxpayer funds. He questioned whether they were going to pick and choose which committee chairs were going to be compensated and which were not, or essentially which chairs were important and which were not. He pointed out that even though he chaired the Shared Services Committee, which saved the county a significant amount of money, he did not feel he should be compensated for it. He said that the chair of the Finance Committee should be separate from the vice chair position, and he reiterated his sentiment that he took issue with compensating committee chairs. Now, this is verbatim from the meeting minutes. Now, I know this year, and the meeting minutes aren't available for me to reference, there was a resolution, a motion, I don't know the correct terminology, to defund the minority leaders. A handful of supervisors wanted to defund minority leaders. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Supervisor Beatty supported defunding minority leaders. So to quote Supervisor Beatty for today, the hypocrisy there is overwhelming, because last year, Mr. Beatty collected a stipend for $6,000 for majority leader, which is not a committee chair. It's an appointment. It's a political appointment. And I just find it very hypocritical that he opposes stipends for committee chairs, but collected $6,000 for a political appointment that met once, maybe twice in a whole year. That's $3,000 a meeting. So in order to maybe not sound so hypocritical, maybe Mr. Beatty can return that $6,000. The other thing I wanted to say, and just sitting here, I felt it was kind of insulting, and I've been insulted before by Mr. Beatty, to reference the board as being math challenged when we talked about the absence, getting up to go to the bathroom, not being present, but being present, that thing. So I thought that was very not professional to your colleagues. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other privilege of the floor, Don? Oh, please. Lexi.
Hi, Chairman Gary, nothing on YouTube.
Okay, hey, then we'll do announcements too. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I've hemmed and hawed since the December board meeting. I'm hoping to try not to get too emotional about whether I should say something. And I figured the full board meeting would really be the best place to say something because you would all be present. I recently just watched the 2 requested videos that we have to watch. And I guess that made me think about it a little bit more. I guess I want to say that I'm a department head. I've been here 26 and a half years for you guys. 10, 11 years as a department head. Kind of feel like I've really gone above and beyond in my position for you guys. Anytime any one of you reach out to me, I have dropped what I was doing and would help you any way I could if you asked me for something. And numerous of you have reached out to me for things, whether it be numbers for you to work on your budgets with, or just anything, for grants. I've always been there to do my job. And I know that there was this huge discussion at the December board meeting. It really hit me personally to sit in my office and watch this board meeting and listen to you all in an open meeting discuss me and what I asked for. I did everything by the book. I followed what was told of me to do. I filled out a budget personnel request that was asked of me. I was given a chart by Ryan, excuse me, our county administrator, as to putting down what increment we felt we were due or where we were at. And not one of you asked me to come to this meeting or called me. I was in my office that day. You could have reached down to me and said, can you come up and be part of this meeting since we're going to talk about you in front of the public openly, money, my position, whether I was worthy of a raise or was it merited enough for me to get that raise? I guess I'm just really upset that you guys would do this to me in an open meeting and then not one of you pick up the phone and call me and discuss it with me. You all had your opinion as to whether you felt that I was entitled to a raise. But not one of you reached out to me and asked me how I felt about it or the work that I do that would warrant that raise. And I just find this all very, very disheartening that you would do that to me. So I just wanted to put it out there so that you all knew how I felt. But it would have been really appreciated by me anyways, if one of you could have reached out to me after that meeting and explained what your 2 cents meant in the meeting. It hurt. Frank, I was very upset when you stated that the raise was based on merit. And that really hurt me because I feel that the merit that I give around here is very deserving of what I ask. Some of you also stated that this needs to be spread out over 10 years. I did a job that I was not being paid for. But yet you want to sit here and say that my raise should be spread out. Spread out over what? I'm confused. I did 10 years worth of work and I was only being paid to be the real property director, not any of the environmental stuff that I took on. Kevin, excuse me, Supervisor Garrity knows very much so what it takes to do an environmental project because he has done them in his town. I was here when he was doing those.
Yeah.
He did one out on 418 and then you did the old car wash right in town. I'm very well aware. And I don't know. I don't understand why nobody would come to me and talk to me. If you need something from me, you don't have a problem picking up the phone and talking to me. But when I needed something, or I shouldn't say need, when I wanted something from you guys, instead of any of you coming and talking to me, you did it in an open meeting that I wasn't even part of and couldn't stand up for myself. So I just want you all to know that, yes, I'm still here doing my job and the environmental part of it. I'm hot and heavy right now in the Johnsburg project again. But none of you considered that. Thanks for hearing.
Thanks. We did, I did come down and talk.
You did, Kevin. You know what? You were the only one.
I understand. I just want the board to know we discussed it.
Mhm.
We're working on it.
Yep.
So I appreciate that. Anybody else? Supervisor Seaver? Thank you, Lexi.
Lexi, I have 3 very quick points of order, excuse me, privilege of the floor. Lexi, as chair for that meeting, and one is for Ms. Strau if she wants to stay so I can provide her with a copy of minutes. But Lexi, first and foremost, I am so sorry that you feel that way. You have every right to feel that way. I think it's very brave of you to come and speak with us today.
Trust me, I was very, very nervous of the repercussions that I'll take.
I certainly hope that you can be assured by the chair and the budget officer / personnel officer that there won't be repercussions for that. That in fact, during that board meeting, I had asked for support for an executive session and did not find any support
Yes, you did.
for a motion and a second to go. I firmly believe personnel matters should be discussed in executive session. That being said, I did leave a voicemail. You were out of the office on vacation and asked Administrator Moore to follow up, asking for a list of those additional duties to make an argument for a stipend, which I did with Supervisor Bramer. I hope that the commitment you'll get from the current chairman and the current budget officer / personnel officer is that they will definitely take into consideration that additional work as a proposed stipend, which is what I heard them both agree to when we had this discussion at an open meeting and at a committee meeting at the end of December, which is on the record. And I have no doubt that it's very frustrating, very hurtful. And as chair at that time, I take responsibility for that and I apologize for that on behalf of the board, just as I'm sure the chair this year will be taking responsibility for the actions of the entire board when appropriate. So Lexi, on behalf of that and that responsibility, I apologize. If I may hit on my quick 2 other items so that I can be done on privilege of the floor. The second is as it relates to Ms. Drow, I'm not sure if she stayed. I would like permission to provide through the chair of the board a copy of the minutes that we were all provided from the January 6th meeting. It is online, so I'm not sure why that's not available. But we do have copies and I'm happy to give her mine if you would prefer, Mr.
We'll
Chairman.
get it out to her if that's.
That being said, the majority leader in 2021 was done with the sole purpose to comply with the law. Not only did the majority leader at the time, which was a colleague and supervisor at large from Queensberry, he was also identified as the finance chair for the period of 2021. So to correct the record, he in fact did chair a committee and was compensated as majority leader for 2021 in that capacity. And it was very clear it was only for the year of 2021, as we've all identified in our rules of the board. We have such removed those positions and the stipends with them as the will of the board. But the lawsuit that was also filed as it related to, I believe a Ms. Maxim filed the lawsuit against the county. The issue of repaying those stipends was in fact dismissed. We've all been provided with that information, and I am certain that Ms. Strow, I'm sure, has also been provided with that information. That being said, if she hasn't, perhaps we should provide her with that aspect of the law. But I assume that this would be consistent with any ruling for all those years since 1995 that we paid, in fact, a finance chair, not a vice chair, approximately $8,500. And that, of course, increased over the years. And we did not go back and ask for any return of stipends during that time where it was not paid for properly because we didn't have it authorized. And I would assume a judge would also agree with that, it consistently with the ruling that just took place by Judge Bruining and Lake George. So I just wanted to make sure the record reflected those points. And of course, appreciate her being here and sharing that information with us today. And lastly, was just a compliment, Mr. Chairman, on your appointment on resolution number 20. Reappointing Supervisor McGowan to the Adirondack Balloon Festival Committee was one of hot topic last year when my supervisor from at large from Queensberry reappointed to the Adirondack Balloon Festival when last year an appointment that was a different appointment and from a prior supervisor. And he worked incredibly hard all year long on the balloon festival, spent every single day there, collected donations as well. And I think if you ask anyone that attended, they will all say what an incredible job he did. So I just wanted to thank you for recognizing that hard work and for appointing him to that committee. And I did not purposely bring up the discussion of vice chair today because I have been assured we'll be able to continue that discussion in legislative and rules and government ops as it relates to next year, since that time frame has now expired. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer, announcements.
Thank you. If I may, on privilege of the floor.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I just want to say as being personnel chair last year that I want to put on the record an apology to Ms. Delory. I was zealously advocating for her to increase her salary because I did think she merited it, and she has been here for a very long time and served us very well. But I apologize that was brought out during an open session, and I hope that this current administration will seek to remedy what I see a deficiency in her salary. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Moreno.
One thing, I second that motion when you brought that up, and I had agreed with it. I was embarrassed like she was not to have to listen to it. So anyway, I have just a short little information here. Treasurer had to leave. Occupancy tax so far for 2021 is in at $6,447,612.97. How the 97 cents got there, I don't know. But it still has one more month for people to report this month for December. As we all know, the big news, Ice Castle is here. We've been watching it closely. I've been down there half a dozen times. I was down the other night to look at it lit up. It's absolutely gorgeous at night. But it opens Sunday, and the reports we're getting, the weekends are almost all sold out, and it only went into effect from Wednesday night. We have a preview of it for supervisors and press coming up on January 26th at 2:00. And we invite all of you to come. And we suggest you wear boots and heavy coats, especially if you want to try the slide that's in there. So that's one recommendation. We're working with the Lake George Chamber CVB to coordinate all this. We've invited the governor, as well as Dan Stack, Matt Simpson, and I Love New York representatives. Actually, we even got a call from a national morning TV show that they want to come up and visit it, which is thrilling. The other night, we had a drone photographer up over the castle, Carl Hellman. We got lots of media advertising going to be doing with that. In winter promotion, including, we're still doing newsletters, e-blasts, press releases, social media, and paid digital media. We are obtaining Ice Castle's photography to use on videos and also some of their drone footage. Also promoting the Winterfest, Winter Carnival, ice bar videos, skiing, outdoor recreational, outdoor activities, and like ice fishing. We're still a little light on the promotion of snowmobiling, because we're not open yet for snowmobiling, and we don't know, we need another 2 feet of snow before we really can open the snowmobile trails. And another information on they're calling it a local day for locals, people that live in Warren County. And that's going to be Wednesday, February the 2nd. It'll be $5 per person, and all county residents are welcome to just walk up and go. And that's a little,
It's sold out.
it's sold out already too? I haven't gotten that, but it is right here. So, I mean, I think it's a hit. I know I talked to Dennis just a little while ago. A couple of hotelers have been sold out already. So it's going to be a great 3-year project that we got this year, and I hope it helps us all in the winter. Thank you.
Anybody else for Dennis, and then Peter? Supervisor Dickinson, Supervisor McDevitt.
Yes, I just want to, 2 things. They sold 65,000 tickets overnight. They opened Wednesday and Thursday morning and reported 65,000 tickets, which is a good thing. I have something I want to do. I promised I'd do it. I'm going to do it. At the organizational meeting, as is my nature, I got a little overexcited and said some hurtful things, specifically to Brad McGowan. I have apologized to him, and he has courteously accepted that apology. And now I'm apologizing publicly for my outburst with Brad. I am sorry, and I appreciate your accepting my apology, Brad. Thank you.
Supervisor McDevitt.
Yes, just very quickly, we did receive some correspondence from a constituent of ours relative to veterinary services and avoiding veterinary services in Warren County. An emergency service vet has recently closed in Saratoga County. So we're looking for a solution to take care of our family pets, our cats that need emergency services. And, you get a call at midnight, you get a call at 3 a.m, weekend services. So I have reached out to Dr. O'Connor. I've reached out to the Glens Falls Animal Hospital, reached out to Dog Logic, which is a great organization in Moreau that knows an awful lot about family pets and provides a great service over there. So I'm working on it. I'll maybe hopefully come up with a solution at our next meeting and see if we can't solve the problem.
And I've checked with other counties after we got that email. I checked with a couple other counties, just to find out what they do.
Okay, thank you.
I have 2 announcements, but privilege of floor, go ahead. Brad?
Thank you. We're bringing up the different committee choices, and earlier this week, I kind of have gone through and made up things to the committees, and Lexi came up and really spoke very well with some deep feelings, and you can feel the hurt in her, and I have to say that I would like to exchange some of the hurt that I have felt. All right. I have worked hard to gain this position. I have given up a lot in my life, business-wise, to represent the constituents of Queensbury, all right, and within Warren County, and trying to help out all the counties and working as a team. Okay. The reason for this hat, I'm wearing this hat today, is not in disrespect, all right? But I was wearing it so I can tell everybody that for what I feel right now, I will be taking this hat off and retiring it right now, because this is what I feel that is going on. What has happened and what it has changed to is really hurt me deeply, all right? And then earlier in the week in the meeting, I had this piece of paper, all right? This paper showed all the committees that I was on, all right, for last year, okay? Which there were 196 meetings, all right? I attended 179. That's 17 meetings that I missed due to basically being out of town at the wrong time. But, sometimes we got to sneak out, all right? This year's committee, I stand up and I go against, to ask for your support, to keep on unity and ask for support to be a chairman. And I believe it's a backlash, all right, of standing up to, I have to change the words from good old boys, all right, to be respectful of the new time is to the good old men, all right? Okay?
Don't worry.
You'll keep laughing, Mr. Dickinson, all right? And by the way, I do not accept your apology, all right?
No.
I accepted it on the phone, but the more I thought about it, I don't think. that
Thank
it
you. This is
Point of
not,
order.
thank you.
Point of order.
Anybody else wish to address the board? Mr. Beatty, Mr. Driscoll and Mr. Beatty. Go ahead.
Announcements. Couple of items. This past week, I took 5 required online trainings offered by the county. The big one was the 2022 ethics training. That's due by the end of this month. Attached to that were trainings for phishing scams, not the type of fishing you do on Lake George, and social engineering red flags. I also completed the discrimination and harassment training and the workplace violence training. Don't wait until New Year's Eve to complete those. I would invite and encourage members to complete those at your earliest convenience. And I'm also signed up for the January 31st for the OES's Tier 3 Emergency Management for local officials training. That's from 9 to 12 on Monday, the 31st. The second issue is a gentleman who I had the pleasure of having coffee with last Saturday duly mentioned that the budget and personnel committees are the most important committees. And even though I don't deny that, I believe that each committee stands alone and is important. And I want to make sure that the public realizes that whether we're a chairperson or a committee person on all the committees matter. This past month, I mentioned that, in my opinion, that Supervisor Frazier chairs, this past year, chaired the most important committee. Today is the 2-year anniversary of the first reported coronavirus case in the United States. I made a promise last year that I wouldn't let a board meeting pass without at least mentioning the fact that we're still involved in COVID-19 and all of the other viruses, whatever their names are. They change as often, but we still have to be diligent about, the masking, the social distancing, the washing hands, all of those types of things, and encourage our friends and neighbors and constituents to get vaccinated. So I just wanted to mention that it wasn't a point of order. I understood what was being said, but again, I think it's important that we recognize the hard work and the good work of all of the committees that we serve on. Thank you.
Supervisor Beatty.
Just a couple final notes. I wanted to thank our esteemed supervisor from the town of Johnsburg. I won't mention her name because I think I get 10 demerits if I mention her name. So the supervisor from the town of Johnsburg, she did an outstanding job as chairwoman of the ARPA committee. We all know what the elephant in the room is. We have some serious problems on this board concerning how women are treated, how they're dismissed.
Point of order.
And so,
Point of order.
Point of order. The speaker is assigning motives to a point that he's trying to make. Our rules specifically state motives are not to be put out there like that. I can recite the sections of the rules in this regard. If he wants to make his point, he's free to make his point, but assigning motives of the chair or any supervisor on this board is totally inappropriate. What he does outside this room, what he says to the media outside this room, he's totally allowed to do. But within the borders of this room, he must maintain the decorum of our rules. And if we need a ruling on this, then I would call for a ruling.
I would ask that you respect that.
I believe the esteemed supervisor from Bolton Landing is incorrect, but I will continue then with the factual data. Okay, and this is data, Mr. Supervisor. There's 25% women on this board. They constitute 7% of the chairmanships or vice chairs. Now, I want that to sink in for a second. There are 25% female representation on this board. They represent only 7% of the chairmanships or vice chairs of the standing committees. That to me, well, those are the facts. I'll let you draw your own conclusion on that one. Now, last year, the fact is every single supervisor on this board received a chairmanship or a vice chair. Every single one on the standing committees. Every single one. Chairmanship or a vice chair. And this year, 8 supervisors have not received either a chairmanship or a vice chairmanship. So I want that to sink in a little bit too. Those are unequivocal numbers that we took off the standing committees and so forth from last year and this year. So those are facts, those are undeniable. And we do have a pattern here that seems to me to be rather concerning. So I just wanted to let those facts know from our esteemed colleague up in Bolton Landing, the facts.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Weil.
Mr. Chairman, normally I would be quiet at this time, but I have to correct the prior speaker. I did not have a chair. I did not have a vice chair. I was a vice chair for maybe a month before I was taken on. So I did not have one or the other.
Right.
And I think the same would be true for maybe a couple other supervisors also. But just to clarify the record. thank you.
Okay. I have a couple
You did it.
announcements, if that's okay. The first one is the Oxy tax reports are due in March. So please, when you get a chance, please get your reports in the county attorney's office. Also, based on the rules of the board, we changed a lot of the committees today. So the assignments are in Amanda's office. Please pick up your assignments. And also, as far as naming the vice chair, I'll go back to what some of the chairmen want to put in their own vice chairman. I have no problem with that. So whatever vice chairman the committee chair wants to choose, they can do that. And if there's any oaths of office to be signed, please make sure you do it today. Did I miss anything? Amanda?
No, sounds like you got it.